You can see where our personalities, right? We're a balance for each other. It'll be perfect.
Welcome back to the Weaker Vessels Kitchen. My name is Erica Van Brimmer.
I'm Amy Brunsma.
And thanks for joining us. So today we are going to talk about just trying something.
Yeah.
Having a good attitude and just trying it.
Right. We talked a little bit last time about how sometimes a struggle in friendship is coming alongside a friend who might not feel great at their ability to do something.
Yep.
And maybe it's that, or maybe it's just you have a hankering to try a new thing, like a handicraft, stitchwork, sewing, whatever it might be. And kind of how to just dig into that. You're actually very good at that. Like every year, don't you set like a thing that you're like, I'm going to learn how to do
whatever it is. And sometimes I don't perfect it in that year. I usually don't, but it kind of has given me a window into sewing or sourdough or whatever it is I want to do. I can kind of take that year to learn to try and figure it out.
Right. And last year my thing was bread, which was probably like everyone's, because sourdough was all of the rage. And the reason I wanted to start that because there is so much intention behind sourdough. But like my first several loaves were not great. I have actually killed my initial starter, and I could have just given up. And I think that that so often is the case. Yes. Well, it wasn't perfect the first time, or it might be too hard, so I'm not even going to start. And we are just here to say that that's nonsense. So don't do that.
It's just nonsense.
Right.
There are multiple ways this can be taken. It can be domestic. Like I can't do sewing, baking, cooking, making beds, whatever.
Right.
Or it can be I'm not good at disciplining my children.
Yeah.
So my husband has to. Or I'm not good at saying no in church. Or whatever it is, right?
That's so true, yeah.
There are many different ways. But as Christians, we believe in sanctification.
Yes.
We believe that a woman's role is primarily in her home and with her family. And yes, there are avenues where she may serve in the church or in her community, that's fine. But in your home, it should be an oasis, an Engedi. It should be a place where you said safety in the last episode. And beautiful. Yeah. Like a woman beautifies what a man builds, right? So a husband has a job and he brings home money. You take that money and you build a menu, you build curtains, you build whatever it is.
Right, exactly.
And we are the telos, in a sense, of what we're supposed to do as women. So, oftentimes, and I've known several women who are like this, they just don't believe they can actually do something domestic because they weren't raised domestic. Right. They were raised more feminist or more just timid even.
Yep. Oh, for sure. Or being discouraged by like non-believing or believing friends and family members like, well, that's not your job or it won't fulfill you or whatever the story is that we're saying.
You just wash bottles all day?
Yeah. Like, and it's such a down the nose at something that is so, well, first of all, it's like your God-ordained position. So we should be like super excited to do the best at that. Or maybe you have a husband who wants you to be doing something different. But I think we've talked about it in the past too, but joy, like we should find joy in these things. So I remember once it was Nancy Wilson, I was listening to a podcast, this is a while ago, but if you're at your sink a lot and you begrudge that position, find something to make that particular area beautiful. Yes. Get a soap that smells nice. Find a nice cloth that, like, it sounds so
Becca Merkel
basic.
has some new cute
That's
towels.
true. They're beautiful. We actually have a couple of them, but it seems like such a simple thing, but that's like a basic starting off point. And then you move into the next thing. Like for me, it was bread. This year, I want to try, what is it, stitching?
Cross stitch.
Cross stitch. That's how far I've gotten.
First step, learn the name.
That's right. And basic sewing, because I don't know how to do any of that. And I previously definitely had the attitude, well, it's probably going to be too hard. So I'm not going to do it. And now that I have pushed myself in certain things and I feel the reward and the blessing of that in my family, I'm that much more motivated.
Right.
And it's great if you have a friend who is already gifted in a certain area, because I think with women, well, she's better at something than me, so I don't want her to know that I'm not as good.
Or there can be a competitive nature there.
And then that's so unhealthy, and it kind of ruins the whole point. So why not, if your friend is good at something that you're kind of curious about, be like, hey, could you maybe show me?
Right.
You don't have to start with some huge ornate whatever. Like no one's expecting you to do whatever the big thing is that you're interested in. But start with something small.
Yeah.
Figure out how to make a loaf of bread, how to do a single stitch. Yes, I'm embarrassed, but I don't even know how to sew on a button. So I'm going to learn how to do that this year. But don't allow your insecurities to stand in the way of just doing something more.
And insecurity oftentimes is just a code word for pride, right?
Yes.
Like, I can't fail because I would feel incompetent, or I would feel bad if I can't master
Someone
that
might
thing.
make fun of me.
And does that ever happen? If someone makes fun of you for not like knowing how to cross stitch, I think just stop being friends.
Yeah, that might
That's
not
just
be
a weird
the
thing.
person, right? Like, that's just so silly. But it's a game in our head, and it's a recipe for disaster.
And it's a lot of pride, and we need to put to death pride and instead embrace what God has given to us, and that is being domestic.
Yeah.
That is our job. So we're not going to even get into the nuts and bolts of that. If you don't agree, you can turn it off. But we believe that, and God has said so much. So let's embrace domesticity. Let's embrace making our homes beautiful, and our homes smell good, and our homes, feel welcoming. And
because I think in doing that, there's other benefits. So say, like, because we have some friends that husbands maybe aren't on the same page with the woman being home. So in what you can do, like if you are working, whether you want to be or not, make the home your husband comes home to so great that he'll be like, oh, like, when did you have time for that, or whatever.
Can you do more of that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I could if, and it's not manipulation. It's just you are fulfilling and being joyful in that role, and maybe eyes will be open.
Yeah.
Or if you have a friend who's like, well, I don't like doing that, but then they come into your house and they see you joyfully preparing a meal, and how that could bless in another way. But for our daughters and for our sons to see us enjoying those roles and trying new things, because like we've talked about our daughters in the past, but like setting a table, cooking something, making it beautiful, singing a song while you're doing it. But then our sons, what kind of woman are they going to want to be with? If they come and they're like, my mom was always happy and trying new things and finding new ways of making our home function better or be beautiful, they might just want to go after a similar type of person. We can pray for these things.
We had asked my son, what happens if you marry a girl who can't cook? It's just a joke. And he said, well, then I will have my Auntie Sandra and my Auntie A teach her how to cook. And it was so sweet, but so profound.
Such a vote of confidence from a young man, really.
Yes.
And his wife will have to cook because he knows how to eat. So,
but it was sweet because, in a sense, it's kind of encapsulating what we're talking about right here. If you don't know how, learn how.
Right.
Go to someone who knows how to do it. We have YouTube. We have
there's no excuse.
Cooking magazines and books, and there's no excuse to not do something that you feel you should be doing.
Right. And it's a character development as well, because like when I got married, I didn't know how to do anything domestic at all. And I have come a long way, but it wasn't because I decided to not try.
Right.
So what my encouragement as someone who started off with nothing is set yourself up for success. So don't go straight into making an elaborate like harvest meal with the bird and the fixings and whatever. Just start with something like, I'm going to learn how to make a really filling and delicious casserole. And once you have that figured out, then you can go on to the next thing. Or I'm going to learn how to do some stitches so I can make an easy curtain. It's also more cost effective a lot of the time. So these are other ways of blessing your family.
And learning how to stretch a buck.
Yes, that's a huge one. But yeah, that was something that, like, I remember when I first met you, I was intimidated by your ability to do things in the kitchen. And my husband said, that's dumb.
As he would.
In his loving way, yes, of course. But he was like, well, why don't you ask her to teach you then? Because I was very curious about learning how to make bread. This was a huge thing for me because I loved the intentional idea behind sourdough. And since then,
you got great at it.
And we became friends through doing these things in the kitchen.
And
like
now
doing
we
Sabbath
swap recipes.
Exactly.
Like, here's this discard recipe and here's my discard recipe. And it's a lot of fun.
Right.
And you can do it with someone.
And if you find someone that's excited about sourdough, you will understand because you end up reading blogs and it's a whole thing.
Yes.
But don't allow your insecurity or your pride stand in the way of trying something new or asking for help.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
And make a goal. Like if it's August, okay, well, I've got so many months left. Christmas is coming up. I want to learn how to make some dishcloths. I'm going to learn how to knit.
Right.
I've
Which
got
is a great
months
gift
ahead,
idea.
And I have time. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly. Give yourself a timeline like that. Like I have 4 months to do whatever.
And be okay with if your stitches don't look perfect and just say to yourself, it's a process, right?
Right.
Practice makes progress, not perfect.
Right.
And by next Christmas, it'll look better.
That's right. Because think of, like, how are you talking to your child? If your child was doing something
Right.
for the first time, do you expect absolute perfection from them? We shouldn't be doing that for ourselves, but we shouldn't put the bar so low that we're not pushing ourselves. So I think that's the encouragement that we wanted to give is find something that you've been like, I'm kind of curious about this thing. And then
Painting,
find a small
pottery, like literally whatever it is.
There's so many ways. And make it an attainable goal.
Yes.
Again, like you don't have to make a statue of your family out of clay, but start with a bowl or something. Yeah, because maybe you'll be like, hey, I actually could do that. I'm pretty good. Whatever it is. But yeah, don't let yourself get in the way of learning a new skill.
And most of the time, you are your own problem.
Oh, yeah. That's a conversation.
No one else is stopping you. Most husbands aren't like, don't learn how to cook, don't learn how to sew, don't.
Yeah.
Of course they would love that.
If that is the case, that seems a rare case, but every man wants a good meal.
Yes.
Right? Like every man wants a good meal.
And we can talk about this next time, but what your husband likes versus what my husband likes is going to be different. And learning what works for your family, what blesses your own personal family is different.
Right. So again, another reason not to compare, but that is definitely something that we'll touch on again in the future. But yeah, just don't get in your own way. We'll probably talk about that a lot through these episodes because I think women have a tendency to really fall victim to themselves. And that's no good.
Right.
Yeah. So find a friend. That's another great way. We were talking about friendship and stuff too. Be like, what's something that then you can maybe help each other? Because you might have a capability or skill set that you don't even know that someone else is looking at, and be like, I noticed that or it could be so many different things, and be willing to be the helper and be willing to be helped, I guess.
I have taught women how to make like a bleach load of laundry because they've never been taught.
Yep.
And that would be embarrassing to say, I don't know how to pour bleach into my machine. Right. My mom never taught me that, or I don't know. And it's like, well, I can show you. It's so simple.
Right.
Grab some bleach and let's go, you know? And it's sometimes those embarrassing things are the things that matter most.
Oh, 100%. That's so true. So again, if someone does ask you, be careful how you respond to them. You're like, this person doesn't know. There's a lot of reasons why you might not know. Maybe you were raised in a home where you didn't have a mom, or you did and she was no good, or there's so many different reasons why. So if someone is, humbling themselves to ask, be like, you know what? Okay, sure. Let's take a couple minutes and do this, or come on over and we can talk about it. Or there's just so many opportunities to grow yourself and the friendship with a person in just being willing.
And you typically grow spiritually when you go through a process like that. Like typically, if you are making sourdough, we've talked about this many times.
You will learn a lot.
It is almost a spiritual lesson to learn how to make a loaf of bread. And the Bible talks about bread, and you kind of can understand certain things after learning it that you didn't know before.
Yes. Yeah, I would recommend to anyone to at least give it a try. Because there is a lesson in every single loaf.
And that's true of doing dishes and disciplining your children and grocery shopping, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
So I think that's really what we're saying is, what do you want to learn?
Do it.
And then go ahead and
just do it, like Nike says.
Just do it. We're going to have to figure out our own tagline now.
Yes.
But yeah, so get out of your own way and just be willing to try.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. And until next time.
To your kitchen.
I'm just going to let her do it.